Hi everyone, and welcome to this new video on our channel or group Moroccan Papers. Today I will review your solutions for the challenge I posted last week on our Facebook group. So if you are not there, you can join us. You will find the link to our Facebook group on the description below. Otherwise, like I said, last week, I think last Sunday, I posted the link for our first challenge. It's going to be a new series where I will try that every week to post a challenge. And you are, of course, invited and welcome to contribute. You can post your solution. You will find all the instructions on how to contribute and the README file. And let's, for example, take a look at the first challenge, which was about reviewing the implementation of a file parser, which was implemented by a junior developer. So like I said, the README will guide you and show you how you can send your solution. So first of all, you will need to create a branch and to avoid conflicts when it comes to branch names. So you could create your branch with your email address. This way, and you can also add a solution file where you can add remarks and explain your solution. But I think for this one, it's not necessary. Well, let's take. But before we talk about the first challenge, I just want to mention that I already posted the second challenge, which I will review next week, so next Sunday. It's already available on GitLab and also on GitHub. Now, let's actually see this in my IDE. So here is the challenge, the first challenge. So like I said, this is an implementation of a junior developer or fresh developer. The purpose of this file parser should be actually to parse any given file and return its content as a PHP array. So far, the developer is asked just to provide or to support JSON and XML files, which he actually did. And we just want to review his implementation and also the implementation and your remarks based on that. So the first thing, what I'm seeing here, we see there is only one file parser, and in this, which contains one method, parse file, and here we pass it the file name and also the extension of the file. And based on the extension, we decide how we wanna handle the file. So now there is a test for it. So there is a functional test for that, which actually, like you see, it parses a JSON file, and the other one we will parse an XML file. So I think, let's run the test. So here in my terminal, I can only run vendor bin PHP unit and set the configuration to the PHP unit XML file, and everything is green, which is good. Now, let me give you my remarks on this implementation. So first of all, we see that this class does not respect the single responsibility, the S in the solid principle. So it means single responsibility because this file does actually, or this method does actually more than what it should do. So here we say that it decides which or how to handle the file based on its extension. So I think it would be better if we could, this check do it separately, so that this method does not have to decide which way we need to handle the file, and also that the extension, actually we don't need to pass the extension. We could get it from PHP or from the file name if it does contain the extension. If we pass the file name, so it has already the extension in it. And one second thing is that this class, this file parser, also does not respect the open close principle. So what I mean by that, so the O in the solid principle means that a class should be actually implemented so that when we need to change something, it should actually be open for changes. What I mean by that, so if, like we see now, it already supports JSON and XML, and if we want to support another extension, so we need to change this class, which is a bad practice. Actually, we should implement this file as so that when we need to add or remove any extension, we don't have to update this code or this business logic. So now that you know what are the bad things that I found here, let's see how you actually try to, or some of you try to solve it. So here I'm going to go to the file, first challenge, and let's see who has already tried to solve it. So we have here Mehdi. Actually, I could just here go to my IDE and switch to his branch. So this is his branch, and I'm now in his branch. So yeah, let's first discuss the structure. Yeah, I see that Mehdi has not added any solutions file, so actually he doesn't need that to explain his solution. So let's see what he has here, handlers. So we have here new handlers, okay, inside the services. And yeah, okay, so we see here it has defined a service for each type, for each extension, which is a good thing. So here we have the business logic for parsing an XML file, and we see that he also passes only the file name. So I believe that here, okay, this is good. So now he gets rid of the extension. This is very good. So yeah, this is what I meant, that we could get the extension based on the file name. So with that method, we got the extension with that function. Yeah, and then we have the JSON parser. So everything fine. And we have here a handler interface. This is very good. Only the one thing that I have here is that it would be great to add type hinting for the parameters. This is very, very important so that we can make sure that we only get strings. And if we get any array, we get an exception or fatal error, PHP fatal error, and also add a description. Why description? I think it's one of the most important things when writing code, because I mean, for you, it could be obvious that parse file does what the method name, but I mean, what the method name also signifies. But sometimes for a new developer who is seeing your code for the first time, he will only rely on the description. And I actually find it bad when the description is missing. And also add the annotation so that my IDE can know which things, how can that my IDE can rely on the annotations. Okay, so I would have added here the description, and yeah, the return type should be an array. So everything is fine here. Now, if I go here, so I need to add also this here, and also in the XML string. All right, so okay, so here he didn't change anything. Maybe he just added the comments here. I don't know if they were added already or he added them for himself, but this is good. Yeah, and here we could add the annotation of inherit document so that we know that this is something we inherited, and the documentation should be seen to be found in this interface. Now this is everything good. Now let's see how he calls these handlers in the parser. But before that, actually I think that handlers should not be inside the services, because I don't know why you define the handlers in the services, but I would define the handlers directly inside the source folder. They're not services. I mean, they are services, but for the application, they are just handlers. And handlers inside services, I don't know. I wouldn't do it this way. Okay, now the file parser. Let's see how he uses or he yeah, I wanted to check how he calls the handlers, how they find the handlers, and yeah, whoa, this is the first time I've seen include in the construct. I mean, it's not the first time actually, but it is something that I hate. I mean, the constructor, as the constructor say, it should actually be only assigning variables to attributes. We don't do include in the construct. This is a very, very bad practice. I don't know why you didn't think about dependency injection. I mean, you have the handlers classes. Let's say what you have in the handlers here. Okay, so they are inside config. Okay, so services and then config under services. This was a bad structure. I would also place the config folder directly inside the source folder. Okay, so you define an array, and yeah, it has a key, and each key represents a parser. No, I wouldn't like this one. No, this is a very bad practice, because like I said, here, this is bad. To include a file, I mean, we are working with object-oriented programming, and also you have Composer for auto-loading, so I wouldn't do it this way. Include is something you use when you don't have Composer and auto-loading, but when Composer there, I would prefer to automatically inject these handlers inside instead of including the file. And now, so what you do in the parse file, so you check, okay, if not the file exists, so return an empty array. I would rather throw here an exception, because if you return an empty array, so that means that, yeah, it's okay to give a file that does not exist, and you will get an array. So an array is so like you're saying, the array is the result of is the content of a file that does not exist. I don't know if I mentioned this here. Professor, he was asked to parse only JSON and XML file. This repo represents. Okay, so I wouldn't do it this way. So if the file does not exist, I would throw an exception so that we know we pass a very bad or a bad variable or bad parameter. Get extension of our file. This is good. And then you have here handler object. Okay, handler interface of type handler interface. And what you do here, if array key exists, extension these handlers, and then new these handlers. Okay. And if handler object is instance of handler interface, then you would return, otherwise you will return empty array. Okay. No, I wouldn't have done it this way. No. I mean, you could get rid of all of this here, even if you want to do it this way. So just new this handlers extension. I mean, you don't need to call the array key exist, because what does array key exist on? It will parse all of the array, which is, I mean, when it comes to performance, it's bad, because you need to go all over the array keys and check if this key does exist in the handlers. Otherwise, you could also call if is set, and then, or you could also do this one. I don't know if this should work. Or here null, and then null. I will just do this handler object, and if handler object is different than null, or if it's null, then I would return an empty array, or I would actually have thrown an exception here. If so, then if no, then we know that there is a handler for that, and I would say return new handler object this way, and then parse the file. So you don't need this. Actually, you don't need also this one. So now, as you see, we have no very amount of the arrays. Let's check that this is already also working. So just to make sure that I'm in his branch. Yeah, no test is executed. All right. Ah, okay. So I needed to define. Sorry. Array. Okay. So all tests are still green. Yeah. So this is how I would do it. I mean, I wouldn't. This I will. Of course, I will get rid of this. I will show you at the end of how I would do this. But the approach of defining handlers, I like it. I really like it. And also adding an interface so that if we add any other parser, so it does need to implement this interface. And here we implement here our business logic. Yeah, why I like this one? Because here we could, for example, test the XML parser separately. I mean, we have now one unit of our class as a unit, and we could test it separately. It's like it was before. It was bad because if you can't test, we didn't have one unit. We had one server who does a lot of things, what it's not supposed to do. Okay, so this is the solution provided by Mehdi. I will give it a point 5 out of 10 just because of that. Just because of this line. Yeah. Sorry for that, Mehdi, but nice try, and yeah, try to get rid of or avoid using include when it comes to classes. Now let's get back. Let's check out all of this and wait. See the other branch or the other solution submitted by Whale. Okay, so Whale, what it does. Okay, so he has, okay, file reader. I think he meant handlers by that. And we see here array extensions, array. I think, wait, here we have 7.3, we use PHP 7.3, and this is already outdated. So we don't use array. I mean, it's possible to use the array, but I think I would use it this way. And then, okay, I will just try to reform that just for better reading. And what you do here, okay, so it's almost the same, except that you define here an attribute. I mean, I would prefer to use an attribute instead of including a file in the constructor. Okay, so here if red, new red file, wait. What is that? Okay, let's just check this one. So this is the JSON parser, XML parser, red file. Okay. Oh, set parser. Okay. And then in the file parser, so you add a new red file, and then if array k exists, array k extension, red file set parser, otherwise, all right, okay. To be honest, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, you are adding a layer of something that we could get rid of it. I don't know why, but you could actually already directly call it. I mean, you have here the parser. Why do you need to add a new class where you set the parser and call a method that parse the file? This doesn't make sense, sorry. This does not make any sense. So I would directly do here. Wait. Okay, so I will leave it this way, and I will say parser new this array. Wait. And call directly parser here. Parse file. Always try to add this. Actually, I would do it otherwise. I always try to get rid of the else if when possible. So I would say here, if not array k exists, so we would return an array, an empty array, and then parser. So at this stage we have already a parser, and then parser. No. So how do you call it? ifile parser. ifile parser. Okay, so I would do it this way. So here, look, we don't need this read file apparently. And one thing here, you could direct. I hate using the strings here. What you could do is class this way. So here we have just JSON. It returns the same here, except that here, if you happen to move this class out of this, or you change the namespace of this class, so it will be automatically considered here. So you don't have to make the change here also as well. So here, and then XML parser. Oh wait, class. Yeah. Okay. Let's make sure that it's still working. Yeah. The tests are still green. But I have some remarks. First of all, is the naming. ifile parser. I don't know. I think the name here is wrong because I don't know for what the I stands here. And then file parser, it could be okay, but I would add it the interface so that we know that it's an interface. It's just some by convention. But here, file and file reader. Actually, this is not. It's not a file reader service. It does not read the file or the content of the file. I mean, it reads the file, the content of the file, but it will also parse it to an array. So it's not just the name here is. You have to change it. So it's not just a reader, but also a file parser. Yeah. But there's also one problem with that, is that if you add any other service, so you have to change this class. You have to make one other change. You have to add let's try, for example, HTML. So you have to change this class to make a change, which is also against the open-close principle. Yeah, but I would prefer this one on the other one. But to be honest, I will also give you here 5 out of 10. Yeah. Sorry for that. Now let's check the next solution. The next solution actually happens to be in GitHub. It's pushed by Hudefa. So I will need to update. Check it, what he did. Here is it. Okay. He introduced here a solution file with his remarks. One should consider the possibility of a non-existent file. Okay, I don't know how you fixed it. A switch statement might be better than multiple if. Yeah, but not always. Okay, good thing the script only reads the file content when needed. Save in memory in the case of file extension that has no read-in implementation. Okay, I think I know what you mean by that. So it's that here. Okay. All right. Wait. Okay, so here we'll read the file only if we have a valid parser. But I see that you do all the stuff here in the parse file. Okay, default result. If file exists, yeah. I mean, you could also use it with if statement. You don't have a lot of if statements, but the default result is okay. It's empty array. Yeah. I see you didn't introduce many changes. Okay. Yeah. So let's show you how I would resolve this problem. So let's create my branch. I will get back to develop. With my email address. Already exists, so let's delete it, because I don't remember what I have done there. And let's create it again. Okay, so now I have a new branch for me. So almost like the most of you, I would also add here a handler folder, but it should be under src. And here I would also add file parser interface. Actually, let's change the name to parsers instead of handlers. Yeah. Do refactor, and let's add here the namespace. So it's going to be app and then parser. Okay, so this is an interface, and it should have, every parser should have the method parse, and it should take a file name, or actually let's call it the content. Let's not just make this only. Let's not add the construct that we need to add the file name. We could parse any other content. So this way we could read the file content before we call the parser and pass it just the content as a string, and we need to parse this string to an array. So this is I think this. Let's just make sure how we could do it for. Yeah. File get content. Yeah. I think I could do it this way. Yeah. So it's not. I'm trying here to avoid or to respect the open close principle. So I mean, if we use here the file name, so we can't use this parser anywhere. So by specifying that we could give it any string content, I mean, we could use it anywhere we want, and it should return an array. And here I will add my description, parses the content, the past content, and returns an array, and returns it as PHP array. Okay, yeah. And then I will add here, let's call it the JSON parser. It should also has the namespace, and should implement the parser interface. Hey, file parser interface. Okay, I will change the name. Refactor rename should also be called parser interface. Yeah, change its name, so parser interface. And we need to implement the method parse. So here inherit dog. All right, I will add the implementation later, but I can now just save this also as XML parser. All right, now I will just copy this one. Okay. JSON response, we get a content as string, and we just need to content as an array, and then yeah, alright, for XML I will use this one, copy it here. So we don't need to open the file. So content, and then we change it to JSON and then return it as an array. I mean, here we could also call the other parser to avoid redundancy. So we could also add return new JSON parser and parse the content XML as JSON. So this XML parser depends on the JSON parser. Yeah, I could use it this way. All right, so now when it comes to file parser, I will now just add all right, now how we would like to call the parser here. I would take this check, I mean which one parser. I would add a factory here. So a factory, so it should be a class that decides which parser we need. So parser factory. I mean, a factory we use it to instantiate any class we need, but we could also use it when we want that this class should define which one we use. So let's call it Parser Factory. And here we could define a method get parser. And it should return a parser interface. And here we need to pass the extension. I mean, if we want to make the condition to be the extension. And here we use, we could use here. I mean, let's just put this here for the moment. Parser Factory. Return a new JSON parser. Otherwise, we will return new XML parser. Otherwise, I will throw an exception. Invalid argument exception. Extension is not supported, for example, and we could let me use this printf. Oh, extension. Okay, I will change this. I will change this definitely, because this is also a bad thing. I mean, this new here, that's a bad thing. But let's just now use that here. So let's also use this one, remove. So we need also to pass only the file name, and then if not, I will also make sure that the file exists first. Through new. I mean, you could add your own exceptions if you want to, but I will just stick with the normal exception. Printf could not parse the file as it does not exist. File name. All right. So here we are sure that the file does exist. Now extension is should be, we get it from the path info, file name, and I think it's the extension key, if I'm not wrong. And then we could call Parser Factory, new Parser Factory, and here we could Parser Factory, we could define a new method called parser, get parser, and we pass it the extension. And yeah, here we have an invalid exception, so I would not catch that exception here. So because if the exception or the parser does not exist, so we want that this method throw also the exception. And here we can also just simply say return parser, parse, and then, oh, let's read the file content. File content, it should be JSON, no, file get content of file name, and then let's just add file content. All right. So as you see here, we have now the parse file does only what it's supposed to do. So it checks that the file does exist. I mean, we could not parse any file that does not exist. You could see if you want to do this condition before we call the method, or we could also leave it here. And here, if we have the file exists, so we could get the extension and let the Parser Factory decide for us which extension or which parser we want to use. And after we get the parser, then we read the file content and we call it the parse on the parser. All right. This is good. Now let's talk about these here, because these are actually bad. I mean, let's wait here. Exactly, you know, here. I don't like this one, because now if we want to add any other parser, so we need to change this factory class. And I also, yeah, instantiate any class inside your code is also a bad practice. So what I'm going to suggest to do is use dependency injection. Now for the dependency injection, we could rely on the Symfony dependency injection. I mean, Symfony has a dependency injection which you could use in any PHP application. Yeah, this is the dependency injection component. It's a component, so you can also add it here. So I will require it in my composer file. But before I do this, let's first make sure that everything's still working. Yeah. So now let's add the composer, the dependency injection by Symfony. And I think I will also need, yeah, let's add it when we get to it, because we will need to, I will be using the YAML format for defining the services, and we will need another component. But until then, let's just add a new folder here called dependency injection. I mean, you could name it whatever you want, but I'm just also, I just like to call the things with significant names. So we will need a container wrapper. So a wrapper, a class that that holds the services definition. So let's call it app, and here dependency injection for the namespace. All right. And the way you use this is actually very simple. Let's get back to the documentation. So you only call this one here. Yeah. And let's check the section where we could use a YAML file for, yeah, here it is. So I'm gonna use let's try just instructor public function construct. Okay, so let me import these classes. Okay, and the YAML folder file loader, and then okay, so actually this is the thing that we are missing. So here we get it from the config component. Yeah, we need this one. Wait, I think we need more than just this one, because wait, let me search for composer require or file locator. Because the way we locate file, we need a component for it. Yeah, we need the YAML component and the config component. So this one, I'm gonna add it first, and also the YAML component, because I like to. I mean, there are many possible ways to define your services. You can define them as PHP configuration file, or XML, or even YAML. And I like YAML because PHP actually should not be. We should not use PHP for configuration. Yeah, I hate this in a lot of it. I mean, a lot of it they do it this way, but I hate it because PHP it's a programming language. It's not a language used for declarations and configuration stuff. Between XML and YAML, I like to use YAML because it's more readable. It's easy to read. So now we have the YAML file. Now let's add config file or config or folder. Let's call it services YAML. I mean, you could use only YML or also YAML. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. And for using the YAML, we need this structure. I'm gonna copy it here and add it. So we don't need the parameters. I think we don't need any parameters, but we need services. So the first service I'm gonna add is JSON. I'm gonna call it app parser, and then JSON, and let's give it the class, or the class is gonna be app parsers, and it's JSON parser. Let's add the other one for define the other service, app parser XML, and is the XML parser. All right, JSON XML parser, and then we will need app parser. Let's call it actually app factory, and then parser. If you notice, there is a convention that I like to follow when defining the classes or the services. Wait, I will just add here app parsers and then factory, parser factory. So that I always like to add app dot. I mean, app is, for example, I know that these are the services that I define myself, because if you use, for example, Symfony or any other framework, there are all the predefined services. And just to make the difference between the service that I define for myself and the services that others or that can predefined in the framework, I use that app. And then the parser. So which type of the service is it? This. For example, we know that this is a service of type parser. and then the name of the service. And here I used, it should be a factory. It's a service of type factory, and then the factory name. And actually what I'm going to do is for the Parser Factory, where is it? Where is this class? I could directly pass the list of parsers. The same way you did with kname and the parser class. So this should be a parser interface, an array of parser interface. All right, and let's add the constructor for that. And here we could do return, return this parsers, and then the extension, something like that. I will get back to this later. I just need to comment this all out. And yeah, now let's add the parsers to here. So arguments, we could, if we had, there is a constructor that waiting for parameters, so you can define them this way. So this should be an array of JSON, and this should be, this is how we call the other service. So app parser and then JSON. And let's add the other one for XML. So now we say that we want to add a parser factory. We define the service and we pass it an array of parsers, and we reference this. We use only the name of the service to reference to this parser. So this is actually what I like. I mean, look, you will see the advantage of using this later when we're done, because now I will make sure that our container works fine. So now we need to define where the config is private config, the path to our config, and also I will add an attribute for the container attribute for the container. So this should be just a string. So it's going to be the path for our config, and then here it's going to be a container interface. Yeah. So container builder should be this one. This container, because this container builder does return an interface. Yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah, it's part of it's a container, and container is also an interface. All right. So now let me get back here. So container, this container, and we have a loader. So we could also use this. We could here pass also the container, and now the file locator. Let me first import this class, and where the config file are located. So for that, I will wait. Let me just make sure, because this should actually not be in the construct class. So let's say load config, and this should be in a method called load config, and we could call it here load config file. All right, now let's define the config path, and it's going to be, so we are here in the container. So in directory, I think we could use base name. So the directory name to get back to the root, and we could then say it's config. Yeah, I will try this before we call it, and then this load config. Yeah, and then we name it the services YAML. I will leave it this way. So now how we could test this one. When running PHP unit, you could add a bootstrap profile. So let's add this here. I mean, here you could add, you could define a PHP file that should be run before you run the test. So let's put this one is test bootstrap.php. I mean, just for now. And here we could, I mean, actually this is also done in I think Symfony or Laravel, one of those. So let's call it bootstrap.php. Oh, I don't need the extension. And here the first thing we need is to require the autoload vendor, the composer autoload file, so that we have all the classes already autoloaded for us, and autoload.php. Vendor autoload.php, and then when we do this, so we already can start the container, and let's call it new container, our container. I mean, I could use only the FQN here. And now we can make sure that the container is run and loaded. So let's run now the tests. And I hope it should work. Okay, so we have here an error. Autoload file to open. Okay, because under tests. All right. So we need to get back one step. Okay, so he said that the file services does not exist in. Okay, so I think here the container, this config, let's see what we have here. Die this config, just to make sure that I forgot to mention this config here, because if you remember, we need to specify which file, where the file is located, but let's also check that config. Okay, this is the wrong path for config, so base name of dependency injection. So actually, I think I don't need that base name here, and I can also make this one here. Let's now check that the path is correct. So it's dependency injection, get back, and then config. So it's the right path. And now, okay, yeah, it's working. Now we have also the Parser Factory 0 passed. It says that too few arguments, too few Parser Factories. Oh, we're still calling it in the file parser. All right, so now we have to make sure that this is working. Let's go to Parser Factory and check if these list of parsers are injected automatically. Stop it here. And all right. We don't call it actually Parser Factory. Oh, okay. I think we need first to check this one here to make sure that this. Okay, let's remove this from here. Yeah, because we need to pass Parser Factory. What we could do here is protect it. Also define this Parser Factory, inject this Parser Factory. Parser Factory. So it's gonna be a file of type Parser Factory, and we could pass this as constructor. All right, and then all right, Parser Factory, so we don't need this anymore. This Parser Factory parser. All right. Yeah. Let's now define. Okay, so the test, because in the test we are calling this parser file. Yeah. So we need somehow the container so that we call add this file parser, but before that we need also to pass app services file parser. File parser, I think this is the right name for it, the right namespace, and as arguments we could pass now the factory parser. All right, we need an add here, and now in the file parser. All right, so we need the container, and to get the container we need some. I don't like this way, but this is actually the same way done in Laravel. Public static function get container, so to return us this container. Okay, we need to return a new instance of this container. First of all, we need to make sure that if this container is different than null, so we don't need to reload the configuration file every time. I mean, we need to do it once, otherwise return this container. All right, so this class is going to be run many times, and this part of loading the configuration file and defining the container, we need to run it only once. So this is why I need this class here. So where new self, we could do it new self this way. All right, and then this should return a container interface. All right, new self container. All right, so this way we have a container, and here in the test file, where is our test file? Where is it? I'm blind. Okay, so here we call container, get container, and now we could call any service we want. So app services and then file parser. Let's remove this one to not get executed, and now let's try it out. All right, so here return value of get container must be an instance of container not returned. All right, why container? Oh wait, all right. Return new self. Oh yeah, only this should be run only if this is null. All right, okay. Yeah, so now you see that here in our Parser Factory, we have the parsers are injected automatically. So this is where you see here, JSON and XML. So now if I run this, it's green. Okay, I have only one test. Let's add other tests. And here also call this one, the file parser. Yeah, now we have all the test screen. I just wanted to make one last change here. So return new parse service. I will make a try, because no, I will leave it this way. Because I mean, if the parser does not exist, we will get an empty or an extension. You could check this if you want, but this is how I would solve that problem. So now we have a container where we inject services. I mean, for the documentation for dependency injection, you can check it here in the official Symfony website. I really encourage you to use the dependency injection. This is one of the greatest components developed by the Symfony guys, the dependency injection. Because as you see here, we defined all our services and their dependencies injection in only one file. And now, if we, for example, decided to use another parser, so we will just here add the HTML parser. For example, I will define its class here, and then I will just go here to services. I will add its definition, app parser HTML parser, and then I will just need to add it here. And look, I didn't have to change any other class. I mean, the class here, file parser, I didn't need to change it. I didn't also need to change the Parser Factory, which is a great thing. So this is what we call by open, or what we mean by open-close principle, so that you could extend your project without the need to change the root class of your project. Yeah, this is how I would do it. I really like, or I would really hope that you like this video for today. Please give me your feedback so that we see if I should continue with this series or not. If you have any question, please, you can reach me. You can approach me on my Facebook account or here in the group. And yeah, if you're interested, you can also try to solve the second challenge, which is, like I said, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but you don't have to implement any PHP code here. You just need to give your thought on the infrastructure design.